related to AI and other tools related to supporting the submission of data to a BRICS repository or system. Today, we're going to talk about the meta-study updates. I'm going to steal a little bit of thunder here, but the meta-study is going to get a name change as well as some additional enhancements. We're going to be calling it the data store, which is a little bit more generalized term. If we could just go back a slide for just a moment. Yep. And then we're also going to talk about a lot of the work that we're doing to meeting CADR requirements to make sure that we build a system that is secure and meets the standards, HHS and NIH standards for being able to submit and access data. And we'll talk about that a little bit also today. So with that, I think I hand it off to you, Michelle, and we'll go from there. So Happy New Year and welcome.
Thanks, Matt. I guess, okay, so you want to keep your microphones muted. Today's session will be recorded and posted on the BRICS website. You can ask questions. Please use the chat and someone will answer. There'll be a monitor throughout the demo today. And there's also will be some time after each speaker to ask questions. Okay, so we'll skip the agenda. I think you already went over this, Matt, so we'll just go ahead and skip over this one. All right, so we'll get started with the meta study updates. So my name is Michelle Harris. I'm part of the FIPR operations team. I'll be discussing the BRICS meta study module. As Matt already said, the meta study module name will be changing to the data store by the end of February this year. So what is the meta study? It is a flexible storage system designed for the management and storage of both primary and secondary data from research studies. Initially developed to house meta-analysis, it has since evolved into a comprehensive file storage. In line with the NIH data management and sharing policy, the meta study module supports NIH's commitment to maintaining a high-quality file storage that enhances the fairness of research data. The main uses for the meta study are meta-analysis. It facilitates aggregation of data from different studies within the BRICS repository module for meta-analysis. It accommodates uploads of data external to BRICS to be included in the meta-analysis. It's also used for storage. It facilitates storage of data from studies that do not have a requirement to upload data to the BRICS repository module. And it supports NIH's data management sharing policy. Please note, data stored inside the file storage system will not be validated against CDEs or stored in the data repository module, and it will also not be queryable. Study investigators are not required to align research data with common data elements, or CDEs. When uploading data to the meta study module, data can be uploaded directly, and the meta study supports various file types. The file size limit for a single file upload is 100 gigabits, and the total file size limit for all the meta study files is 300 gigabits. There are controls in place for data uploads, and administrators can adjust these limits as needed. The information within the data store or the meta study can be cited in publications using a digital object identifier, or DOI, which is generated when the study is created. The DOI starts in a draft status and becomes published once the study is made public. The Office of Data Science Strategy contracts with DataCite to generate DOIs, ensuring that the meta-studies information is easily citable in research publications. The meta-study has recently implemented new features, such as the ability to data transfer with Globus, which is a platform for secure high-speed data transfers. This facilitates connections between BRICS instances and BioWolf. It also allows users to request to archive or request to delete published data, and giving the ability to cancel those pending requests. All right, so let's take a closer look at the meta study. I'm just going to stop sharing for 1 second. All right, I think we're sharing. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the meta study. So we'll just click on the icon here. So this brings you to the over page. It shows all the available studies here in the meta study. Users will only see the published studies and the ones that they have access permissions. I'm logged in as an administrator, so I'm able to see all the studies, including the ones in draft status. So over here on the left side, you'll see filters to help refine your search, and a search bar where you can search for the study title or the metadata within the study. So let's create a meta study. So let's click on create meta study. Here, you want to put in all the information regarding your study. Items with the red asterisks are required. When you provide all the details to your study, it helps data accessors have a comprehensive comprehensive information about your study. So I'm just going to put in some random, so we can get to the next screen. I'm just going to click on the required fields here. All right, so here under research management, you want to enter the metadata for your research team. Then down here for your funding information, and also your grant information. Edit this just so we can get to the next page. Down here, you can put some keywords regarding your study to make it more searchable. All right, so you're going to create and finish. Oh, got. Okay, so now your meta study has been created. To upload data, you want to click Edit Meta Study. Here on the documentation chevron, this allows you to add documents or URLs that's relevant to your study. On the Data tab, this will allow you to upload data either by file or directory. Or if you have the permission, you can also upload by Globus. Here on the permissions tab, on a permission chevron, this will allow you to see who has access to the study. And if you go back to the overview, oh, my mouse has died. Okay. If you go back to the overview page, here you will see the draft, the draft UI. Right. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening. And I will put
Yep. Feel free to raise your hand or come off mute on your microphone and ask any questions. I do want to point out one thing about I'm going to call it the data store, so I start to get good at calling it the data store. The data store also allows you to update much of the information of a study without having to resubmit a whole study or whatever. You can just go in there and update appropriately if you have the appropriate credentials, of course. But I think Maria had a question. Is it available on all the BRICS instances? And the answer is yes. Any instance that wants to have the data store or meta study module, they can, that is part of the system. The neat thing is that we added and built this data store is because there are some groups that want to share their data, but they didn't necessarily collect it with the common data elements that might be used in the rest of the system, but they can still share their data for their particular study in an effective way in the data store. For those who have collected data consistently, for FITBER, all the grantees, both from the DoD and from NINDS, are required to use the common data elements when collecting and submitting their data. That data gets validated against the common data elements and then submitted actually into the database that was queryable. And that's a pretty high bar. There's a lot of benefit in the back end, but we built the data store for those groups that maybe not had required to collect data using standard common data elements, but are required to share their data. That data store is an effective tool that helps them with that. That was a long answer to your question. Hi, Maria. You have another question?
Yeah. So you said it's not variable by the same mechanism that the regular BRICS instances. What are the search capabilities within this model?
I'm sorry. It was I don't know if it was breaking up for other people, but your question I couldn't hear you effectively. Could you maybe repeat? I'll turn off my camera too.
I think she asked what the search capabilities are for this metadata, if I understood correctly, Maria.
Okay. So if Michelle, if you just want to go up, back and share the screen, and if you can just show how you can search. But Michelle, are you there? Yep. You can go to the demo.
One second.
Okay. So the search capabilities is that one, you can filter on the left-hand side of the pane. There was all the filters, but then there's also a search bar that actually searches all the metadata elements of those columns that are shown, and actually a few that are hidden beneath. There we are. So if you just go back to the list of meta studies, yeah. And in the right-hand search, I don't know, type something, MTBI, for example. And that shows actually hold there for just a sec. You can see all the different groups that it searches. It searches the abstract aims as well as all those other ones. And you could minimize that, but just type MTBI, for example. And it found those studies that probably appear in the abstract where they're doing mild traumatic brain injury research. Did that help, Maria? So the data that goes into the repository module is actually the data that goes into the database and is consistent with the common data elements, and that you query the whole database and you can query across studies, again, given you have the appropriate permissions. This same module, if you just go into the data repository quickly, Michelle, you have that same search capability up in the right. You have filtering, and then you can do a search, and it's essentially the same process.
I will say, like, the more sophisticated.
Go ahead.
I was the more sophisticated search querying that we've been experimenting with for the data elements, and even some of the studies have been mainly focused on the data repository. We haven't focused as much on the data metadata infrastructure. So I would say, newer technology for searching is going to hit the data repository first at this point, mainly because that's focused on having a study where everything that's submitted is defined in our data dictionary, right? And hopefully most of it will be using common data elements. Does that clarify it a bit, Maria?
Yeah, and in fact, for our query tool within the data repository, we're adding AI functionality to make the data more discoverable, findable, and then allow you to refine your query appropriately. And eventually, I could see some of that migrating to the data store also. That's future. Well, it's actually, we've done a lot of work on the query tool for the AI module to enhance the discovery. Another aspect also in the meta study is that you could make the data more discoverable for outside entities to write AI discovery tools or whatever kind of discovery tools, and providing an API in the front end of either the data repository or the data store that serves up the data either possibly in Fire or Datum, and then people could programmatically query the meta study or the metadata about the data store or the metadata about the repository and make those studies more discoverable more widely. Okay. Any other questions before we move on to CADR? Great questions. Thanks, Maria. And I think, I'm not sure who we handed off to here.
Oh,
is that Priya?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Priya. Okay, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Matt and Michelle. Good morning, everyone. Let me quickly just share my screen. Okay. I'm just making sure. Okay. All right. Hi. My name is Priya Raju. I'm part of the product management team for BRICS. I'm helping with the CADR implementation for the BRICS systems. And I'll just go over the agenda for today for CADR. So basically, like what CADR is and how BRICS is being compliant with CADR standards, and what are the documentation that BRICS team worked on, and all the phases and timelines that we did for making this implementation happen. So for those who are new to this terminology, CADR stands for Controlled Access Data Repository. So it was basically issued by NIH to make sure that all the security and operational standards for the NIH CADRs are established. So the link that you see over here is basically the notice that is available in the NIH website in the grants page that has all the details of the requirements for CADR, what is the purpose of CADR, and all the inquiries, etc. So the detailed list can be viewed in the link. And to establish all these standards is because we needed to have a controlled access for all the human data, including all the access management system that meet all the 4 criteria that is mentioned over here. So basically, the things that are part of the NIH programs that are supported by intramural funding, and accessing data access or the storage that is stored in long term, and making sure that we have all the access are controlled for the research data, and also the reviews, right? Whatever we review or access, all the management. So we need to make sure those are also controlled, and all the federal oversights, the partners that are used, and our federal staff, making sure that we have given all of them the authorized access. And all the repositories that meet all these criteria that are considered as the NIH CADR repositories. And the BRICS team were given a guidebook earlier last year during April that contains all the security and operational standards, which is also mentioned in the notice that I shared in the previous slide. So we had to make sure that we adhere to all the standards that is mentioned in the guidebook. So some of the key points that is part of the guidebook includes the procedures and the policies that we need to meet the CADR compliance requirements. It also contains of all the roles and responsibilities of all the parties that have been involved. This is also applicable for both the NIH CADRs and also the associated access management systems. So basically, this is just primary reference for ensuring that we adhere to the repository to the NIH standards. For all your reference, the guidebook is available in the NIH official website. The link also is mentioned over here in detail if you all want to see. And like I mentioned in the earlier slide, we did have documentation work that was involved. So the BRICS team, we worked closely with the operations teams for all the BRICS instances, and they in turn worked with all the program teams to develop and finalize all the key documentation that was mentioned in the CADR guidebook. So a few of the documents that were delivered were the dark charter, which defines all the roles, responsibilities, and the governance structure of the data access committee. The second one was the NIH CADR SOP that contains all the standard operating procedures that is outlined in the CADR process within the BRICS NIH framework. And the last one is the corrective action audit workbook that was already delivered last year. It was basically used to track and manage all the findings and the corrective actions. The CADR phases and timelines that we implemented starting earlier April were just mentioned over here. So the phase 1 included all the accounts that were not permitted for users with free domain emails. And also we were given a list of countries of concerns that were restricted. So we made sure that all the users from those countries of concerns do not have access to our repositories. We were also given a list of certain companies and institutions and few individuals. So we did a manual from the backend in the database. We made sure that all the individuals lists that were given, we made sure that they don't have access to our systems anymore. And we deactivated all the accounts of the people who match those criteria, and all the rules that were set up. We made sure that all the users that were logging onto our system match the criteria, and we don't allow them to access our system. And that was in April of 2025. And in May 2025, we implemented the security and oversight standards, and we also submitted the final copy of the corrective action plan workbook that has all the risk mitigation strategies for any controls not implemented. And we also submitted one of the attestation statements that was signed by a senior official. Coming to the phase 2, which was implemented in Q4 of 2025, we ensured that we increased our verification process to IAL2. Initially, we were IAL1, which is Identity Assurance Level 1. So we made sure that we are compliant as per CADR, which is Identity Assurance Level 2 and above. So the BRICS team partnered with the RAS team to ensure that our BRICS system is compliant with the Identity Assurance Level 2 or higher, which is part of the CADR initiative. And for we initially had login.gov, which was IAL1 compliant. We made sure that we upgraded the login.gov standards to include facial recognitions and photo ID and social security SSN verification. So in the past, login.gov is available for both the users within the United States and also internationally as well. But going forward, login.gov is only going to be available for users within the US territories. We introduced a new identity provider, which is called as ID.me, so which is also IAL2 compliant. It supports international users as well as US users, and it offers the same identity verification capabilities that was offered in login.gov. And in terms of logging and enhancing auditing and logging throughout the system, the list that is mentioned over here is just for example purposes, but there was a lot more that we implemented as well. So we made sure that throughout the system, the requested URL, the originating IP address, the CADR names, and the IC names, the person's names, the client information, they're all compliant with CADR. So this is just the table that is being shown here is just a brief overview of what we have completed, which I just discussed in the previous slides. So this is just a timeline of what we completed and when we completed. The only thing that is in progress as of now, which is due on January 21st, 2026, is we are working on the DUAs and the DARs forms, which will be updated to include clauses required as per the CADR guidelines. That is the end of my presentation, and I will open the forum for questions.
Thanks, Priya. That was excellent. I'm just going to make a general comment. The one really nice thing about the BRICS platform is it's not a one-off platform, in that we build this functionality within the BRICS proper kind of framework, and then every instance that we deploy to, say, FITBR or PDBP or NEI BRICS, they automatically get all of this functionality. So it's a very cost-effective way for groups to adapt this system and get all this functionality out of the box. So if there are any other questions, if there are not any other questions, I want to thank Priya and Michelle. Excellent presentation. And we'll give everyone a half hour in the new year back to them. Okay, well, great. Have a great rest of the day, and always feel free to reach out to me or somebody in the group if you have any questions or want to learn more about BRICS. All right, take care. Bye-bye.